Computex 2024. I'm going to need you to sit up, pay attention, watch all the videos, click all the buttons. Let's get started. What's going on with Computex 2024? It's AI, it's thin and light, it's PCs. Okay, Nvidia had the first keynote, which was at night on the day before Computex started, and then AMD has a keynote, Intel's got a keynote, everybody's got a keynote. They're going to talk about their new products, everything that's coming in the enterprise. The laptop makers cannot wait to show you what they're going to have for back to school, fall laptops. Like, it's coming. There's so much coming. There's new Xeons, there's new Epic server CPUs, there's just so much coming. A lot of fun stuff. Let's take a look. Travel expenses for Computex paid for by ASRock. Thanks, ASRock. Be sure to check out our Computex coverage and the live stream with ASRock. So thanks, ASRock, for sponsoring this video. And on with the Computex coverage, Computex 2024. Computex 2024. I sell AI and AI accessories. But I have a feeling that this Computex is going to be dominated primarily by AI and then like data center stuff. But really the data center stuff is the data center stuff that powers AI and everything that's coming with AI. So it's like, oh look, the network connectivity is really insanely way faster. But really, it's the network connectivity that enabled better AI connectivity. I mean, that's kind of where we're at, right? So far, the Nvidia and AMD keynotes are down. Nvidia, their keynote was weird.
The more you buy, the more you save. The more you buy, the more you save.
The more you buy, the more you save. The more you buy, the more you save. The more you buy, the more you save.
It is not accurate, but it is correct.
They really didn't talk a lot about their stuff that they hadn't already talked about at GTC. Although some partners announced some products that are working with Nvidia. So people like ASRock and Supermicro that are launching systems with Nvidia, okay. Yes, but would you say that the more that you buy, the more that you would save? Would you save more if you bought more? What if you could save more by buying less? Could that work? But then, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Could you save more? AMD was a lot more forthcoming in their presentation. They have new client CPUs, which you should definitely check out. 16% IPC uplift, new configurations. And so in AMD's presentation, they wanted to talk about AI and data center and everything that goes with that, including networking and connectivity and their ROCm software stack, but also the AI PC and Microsoft Copilot and everything that's coming with that. AMD promises all of this is going to come in July. Well, not all of it, but at least the AI PC stuff. AMD unveiled a roadmap with the MI325, the MI350, and they're switching to a yearly product cadence. Now, this follows Nvidia, who has also switched to a yearly product cadence, but 288 gigabytes of VRAM on their GPU, their new MI300s. I mean, it's going to unlock trillion parameter models. We're going to be stretching the limits of what large language models by themselves are capable of. And that's probably going to propel us into the next generation of AI, which is going to be large language models that hallucinate and have all kinds of problems. And this other stuff that we bolt on top of that to try to deal with those shortcomings of large language models. But things are looking pretty good for Ryzen 9 desktop. I mean, 16 cores, AM5, forward compatibility of AM5 to 2027. There's a lot to like so far about the press announcements. So the AMD keynote is behind us, as well as Qualcomm. Now Qualcomm is coming in with both barrels blazing. And so Qualcomm is big news here. Qualcomm is a big part of Intel's event at Computex. And Qualcomm had their own event at Computex to talk about their new Windows-based laptops. Look, Microsoft and Qualcomm are leaning into this thing 100%. Microsoft developers are working 80-hour weeks to try to bring together the Windows on ARM experience to make it the best possible thing that it'll be. And the reality is that whether or not Windows on ARM, this turns into a good experience or not, Microsoft is going to use it to lean on Intel and AMD for cheaper parts. Bottom line. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Qualcomm laptops look like they're going to be the only laptops that have AI, the Copilot AI NPU acceleration out of the box, even though Intel Lunar Lake and AMD's new Strix Point APUs are going to have built-in AI. That's what Charlie Jamergian is reporting at Semi-Accurate, and other people have picked that up, but there wasn't really any substantiation for that, apart from some harsh language and leaks from Microsoft and a little bit of the stuff that came out from the one-on-ones if you were paying attention to some of the video that Microsoft published. I don't know anything about that, but I did want to look more at what AMD was saying about their software stack, because look, I mean, if you follow the content on this channel, you follow our Danny DeVito series where we're using AI to create hilarious memes, you know that things are not always what they seem in the software stack. Sometimes it's not always an apples to apples comparison. We have kind of a monoculture when we're talking about Nvidia's software stack, and what AMD is doing, partnering with Open Compute, looks like it's going to be the alternative that makes sense for the entire rest of the industry to use. I mean, it's kind of wild if we'd step back about the Open Compute stuff and talk about Ultra Ethernet. Ultra Ethernet is not super modified Infinity Fabric. And a lot of the IP that AMD came up with, they're just sort of saying, okay, Open Compute, use our stuff. It makes sense for you to use our stuff. Embrace it. Extend it. This is going to make sense for the entire industry. And even Intel is leaning into Ultra Ethernet with their Xeon line. It's probably a conversation for another video, but it is interesting to see that wash out when we're talking about Open Compute integration and everything else. So I asked AMD, hey, can you give me some more information? And they were happy to oblige.
So there are two things that are happening on the interconnect which are quite essential for large-scale training and inference when you go to multiple GPUs. So one is UEC, which was announced last year, the universal for NICs, Ethernet networks.
Ultra Ethernet.
Ultra Ethernet networks, sorry for that.
Which doesn't really look a lot like Ethernet when you start peeling back the layers. It's like, oh, this is just like a load store fabric.
So taking the Ethernet standards and then ensuring that it can accommodate Gen AI standards and the requirements is a pretty critical path that Ultra Ethernet is trying to accommodate. And you see the industry that's coalescing around it. So that's one big piece, that's between nodes. The second part is within a node or between multiple nodes, the GPU interconnect needs something that's non-proprietary, that's also open standards. So last year we opened up our Infinity Fabric, the XGMI, IPs to everyone else to build on. So what we have now done is build a partnership group that is going to adopt Infinity Fabric as the 1.0 standard, and then it's called UA Link now, Universal Accelerator Link. That will be a non-proprietary standard for GPU to GPU communication, so you can scale the workloads across multiple GPUs. So between these two, the idea is hardware, software, and networking becomes an open standard that is driven by industry, that's open, that's ubiquitous, that is scalable, that brings the ideas from a very broad industry, including the likes of Broadcom, Arista, Cisco, Marvell. So it's a great standard for us to start building and creating this infrastructure that provides this openness and choice.
So from a developer perspective, I've got 8 GPUs in an Open Compute chassis, and this enables me to basically just run PyTorch and have 8 times 288 gigs of VRAM for my PyTorch program.
That's right. So already in Infinity Fabric, you have a memory that is shared between the GPUs when you're connected. So the UA Link now expands it to multiple GPUs, not just the 8 GPUs within a node, but within a pod. So that is
we're going rack scale.
That is right. That's right. And it's the compute demand is growing so fast. These models do not fit in a single GPU, and now they are expanding beyond just a single node to multiple nodes. So the best way to keep the communication high, to keep the performance high, is to link them such that they have this universal memory that's available for them.
Now, is this from a software developer's perspective in terms of like the whole ecosystem? Is it at a stage where it's if you build it, they will come? Or are these projects that AMD has already been working with on their large data center customers and most of the software plumbing is already there?
So I think most of the software plumbing is already there. A good example is our collective communication libraries with Rickles already available that takes advantage of Infinity Fabric. So all these plumbings exist today. The question is, what can we now build together on top of it to take advantage of what's coming next and what's there today?
Also on display at AMD's booth, they had MI300A. Now there was no new information about MI300A, but this chassis looks really attractive. 4 MI300A CPUs. I think that's 24 compute cores per socket, so 96 cores in this, plus you've got MI300X levels of GPU all in one configuration. This chassis looks like something special, but there wasn't really mention of MI300A. The roadmap was MI300X, MI325X, and MI350X. And as we learned from the interviews with the AMD folks, that's a 1-year cadence. So AMD is accelerating even more, pun intended. This chassis that has the open compute modules in it, these are MI300 modules, but the MI325 and the MI350, well, certainly the MI325, I'm not sure about the MI350, is going to look a lot like this. This is the modularity that we're talking about. This is the drawer O GPUs. This is the open compute standard that AMD has embraced, and this is 8 MI300s in a single box. But 8 MI300s in a single box is one of those situations where it's like, what have you done for me today? Because 8 MI300s in one box, that's old hat. Well, that's the Infinity Fabric interconnect, so that you can connect a bunch of these in one rack.
You know, AMD, as Lisa continues to hit on this point, we're probably the only company who has everything from end to end, right? Like we have MI300 now for the very flagship that can do the training, inference for large language models, to data center server, right? And this is super important because you can't just do some the whole large language model inference and training with only a GPU. You have to have a whole infrastructure with CPUs, and there's still so much workload that runs on the CPU to coordinate all these workloads. So having such a powerful EPYC CPU is very important for AI. And then going to the embedded, right? You saw like Lisa talk about Subaru, talk about Hitachi Power, talk about Canon. All of those has AI, but also a whole lot of other stuff. Like you have to do sensor fusions, you have to do real-time processing. I mean, think about your car, right? Like if AI it's fast enough, but if your sensor is too slow, your reaction's not gonna be fast enough. I mean, that's gonna be a life-threatening moment, right? And then, the exciting thing we just launched is Strix, right? That's the AI PC that has a 50 tops. It's literally more than anybody who were at the Computex keynotes. I mean, even Microsoft came on the stage, basically blessed the 50 tops, right? Which is 10 tops more than what they say is the minimum requirement for the Copilot PC. So, it's a very exciting time, and, we've shown, so block floating point, right? That's one of the new data type that we innovated in this Strix. Nobody else has it. It kind of takes the best of 8-bit data type, which is a great performance, but sacrifice accuracy a lot. I don't know if you remember that cake picture. Yeah. And there's a little bit of exaggeration, but you get the point, right? Like actually the accuracy doesn't matter a lot, But 16-bit is great, but you get half the rate. So this is kind of getting the best of both.
And so that's basically everything we know about data center from all of the data center stuff, and the AI and AI-related accessories that are going to be sold here. Oh, making a cameo was also our plucky little AM5 server. Look at this cute little thing. It's 1U. It's got room for 4 3.5-inch hard drives. I'm so glad that AMD is doing this. If you follow this channel, you know that we've been a big proponent of using Ryzen's in this way since AM4, because they are just powerhouse machines. That 5900 XT that AMD announced, that's a 16-core part. That would be a perfect pairing with an older AM4 server-ish motherboard like the ASRock X470, which sometimes you can pick those up on fire sale, or sometimes you see those come up on eBay for a couple $100, which is a lot of money off retail. And that is a really powerful home system or small business server or small appliance NAS that can keep up with 25 gigabit on iSCSI and everything else. So that's pretty exciting. Now, NPUs and TOPS, you might have not heard this terminology before. NPUs make the most sense on laptops because you've got CPUs, which if they're running at 100% on laptops use a lot of power, and GPUs, which if you're running the GPU at 100%, it's also going to use a lot of power. The GPU still makes the most sense for the most performance for AI. That hasn't changed. And whether we're talking about Intel or AMD or really even Snapdragon, what the NPU does is give you the ability to run AI tasks without killing your battery. But unfortunately, that takes a lot of silicon real estate on your laptop. But if you, the end user, find it genuinely useful, then you're probably going to be willing to pay to upgrade for those AI capabilities. So if you're thinking, when am I going to get NPUs on the desktop? Well, AMD said that they were going to do NPUs on their new processors. There's more details about that coming later. But by and large, you really probably don't need an NPU on your desktop processor because you'll have graphics like desktop class graphics. You're not power constrained. The main reason that you want an NPU is so that you have a low power option to be able to run some type of AI. We haven't even really figured out which type of linear algebra we want to do, and that's what we're talking about when you see things like, is it floating point 16? Is it a combination of floating point 16 and int 8? Is it just a purely int 8 solution? And that's the TOPS thing, and different manufacturers are referring to different things when they refer to TOPS, but 40 TOPS at the low end, which is what Microsoft is going to require for their AI Copilot certified PCs. AMD Stuff is all going to be 50 tops. It looks like Intel's lineup is going to be 40 to 45 tops, depending on which particular processor you get. But how that shakes out for you, the end user, as an experience is going to depend entirely on the software stack and mostly on what we figure out is actually useful to run in a battery-constrained environment. You plug your laptop in, and it's going to be able to use the CPU or the GPU for more performance, and that's what is, some of the advertising for the laptops say that, oh, this laptop is capable of 100 tops, but 40 of the tops are on the NPU. It's like, well, you're going to be running your CPU and your GPU at 100%, which is not great for your battery life, but the performance of the NPU tops should have a negligible impact on your battery life, or at least a lower impact on your battery life. That's the whole point of NPUs. Now, I'm diving into the rest of Computex. I'm going to take a look at server stuff and chassis stuff and home server stuff and whatever else. And I've got ASRock coverage coming, so be sure to check all that out. I'm Wendell, this is Level 1. I'm signing out, and you can find me in the Level 1 forums. Comment there or below on the kind of stuff you want me to look for at Computex. And don't worry, I am on the lookout for 10 gig USB-C Ethernet adapters. Haven't seen any yet, but I am looking. It's been a year. Will we find them now? Probably not.